Okay. This program comes to on the Guyana Rice Producers Association Action Committee. It's the voice of rice farmers in the Guyana Rice Producers Association. On my left is Dr. Duga, who is an expert on the rice industry, and he'll be telling you a lot about the rice industry this afternoon. And on my right is Mr. Nelson Mackenzie, who is also an agriculturist who has long experience in the agricultural field. And on the extreme left is Mr. Rajendra Bisesar. What I want to do today, before I bring in these gentlemen, is to give you a little background to why we are here today. We are having a series of programs on the rice industry. As we have said many times, the rice industry is in a major crisis. The government is saying that everything is okay. The crisis we face in the rice industry is directly caused by the mismanagement of this government, the PPP government. That is why we're saying on this program that the policies that will benefit the rice farmers, the PPP has failed the rice farmers, and therefore what we are saying is that the rice farmers and other people must not again vote for the PPP. For us to get changes in the rice industry, for us to be able to improve the living conditions, to get better prices for rice farmers, we have to change this government. Our demands for the rice farmers, which has been out there for more than 7 years, we've been trying to get this PPP government to talk to us about changing the conditions under which rice farmers are living and working, but they have refused to do so. So we have lost faith. Thousands of rice farmers have lost faith in the PPP. As you may know, traditionally the rice farmers have been supporters of the PPP. 120,000 people are dependent directly on or indirectly on the rice industry. And the PPP has drawn its support. More than 30% of its support has come from rice farmers and rural people. We want to change that. And the rice farmers are very angry, as you will hear from Dr. Durga, who will now give you much more details about a crisis in the rice industry and how we can resolve it. Dr. Durga.
Good afternoon. A few things are very clear. One of the things is that the president of Guyana has publicly stated that the paddy prices will remain the same or a little lower. Let me make the first conclusion there. Every rice farmer know that with the prices they get the last crop and the crop before, they cannot make ends meet. We have to make a differentiation with those rice farmers who have large-scale production. At a larger scale, you might be able to make ends meet. The smaller farmers cannot make ends meet anymore and have to look for extra jobs or doing other things. But that is not what the purpose is of being a rice farmer. Now, the direct result of that is that the smaller rice farmers gonna go out of business. A lot of the bigger rice farmers can pick up those lands, and the conclusion there is that the poor are getting poorer, the middle class is eliminated, and the rich are getting richer. The concern people like myself and the other people here on this table have is that if you are in the process of eliminating the middle class, and everybody in middle class who has a little bit knowledge about economics know that the economy is basically driven by the middle class, not those few very rich who have a battalion of tax lawyers and so forth and can avoid paying taxes and so. It is the middle class which drives the economy, and if you're eliminating that, then we have a problem. Now, the question is now, why does the government say we have given $5.1 billion to the millers, and why are still so many farmers saying that they are not paid as yet or not fully paid as yet. Now, the first question is where did that 5.1 billion come from? And I will leave it to the politicians to figure that out, because I hope after May 11th, whether they like it or not, we will find out where it came from. The second thing is that if that 5.1 billion is given to the millers through GRDB to pay the farmers, why are farmers still complaining that they are not paid? I don't know all the examples, but I can give you a few. That $5.1 billion is used to pay a lot of millers of rice they had already supplied, which was supplied to Panama, but Panama didn't pay or didn't pay on time. I don't know if they have paid now. So to calm down the rice farmers and to save face, they have given that money. So that is not money which is basically to help the farmers. It helped the millers, and it helped the boys in the inner circle themselves. So if you were one of those few millers who are incorporated in the GRDB/PPP monopolizing of the rice industry, then yes, you're in a good situation. You got money, you could pay some of the farmers or all of the farmers. Then you have the other set of millers, which trickery is the name of the game. Let me give you one example. Near to Georgetown, the Ruimzig mill, which I'm being associated with, Mr. Jagnarine, in the presence of at least 10-15 people, said, okay, you guys can export 3,000 tons of paddy to Venezuela. So those people there bought at the price they have set for paddy which is going Venezuela. And what do? They refuse to even answer an email when the paddy is ready to be shipped. Now, thank God those people say, hey, we are again being tricked. And they stop buying, but in the meantime, they have bought paddy from farmers, and they're behind now to sell the rice on the local market or whatever other market to be able to pay the farmers. And they're not doing an excellent job on it, but they're trying and they're getting there. Those farmers will be paid. But this is a mill which don't owe too much to the farmers, so they're gonna get over it. And I have advised them, and the farmers have to forgive people like me, that if you're a rice miller and today you're not in the inner circle with the government, the best thing to do is not buy paddy. Next question is, where will all the paddy go? So the situation is complexer than we think. In Berbice, in Essequibo, it's the same situation. The millers who are in the inner circle are accommodated properly. The millers who are not in the inner circle are being tricked in taking people's paddy and then having a big problem to pay those farmers. And that is for one simple fact, that there's no vision, there's no program. When we came to the table with the Venezuela deal, the minute they saw it, they coup it. It was a coup. They took the whole thing. They transformed GRDB, which was meant to be an advisory platform to the government. They made it a trading company. They lie blatantly every day. They tell the farmers that the paddy price is between the millers and the farmers, which is a blatant lie. They have created situations where the millers has no choice, and no miller is in the business to go into bankruptcy. So they try their best. And who is paying all that damage being done and inflicted by this government, GRDB, RPA, and the whole bunch of them? The farmer. The farmer is holding the short end of it. And if this doesn't change, then I'm afraid that this is the last time the industry will see this production, because why would a farmer plant rice if he cannot pay his bills? And In the next program, we're going to touch on sugar to say how that was destroyed. So that is at this moment what I have to say. Millers are doing their utmost to pay off the old debt, because they're in business to make money. They have debts. They have to do business to be able to pay their interest, the banks, and so forth. My major concern is what happens with the coming crop. Already, the government has said that the paddy price is going to be the same or a little lower. So if that is a fact, and trust me, we cannot know because we don't know what policies they have. They boast about African contracts and Panamanian contracts and so forth. Well, if Panama and Venezuela is as the previous crop, and they have already concluded that the price is the same or lower, whatever other markets they can find, which is Africa, and so we know we are international trade. So it is not going to improve the price. So to the farmers, there's one thing I have to say. That's the price you have to expect. And if you want that change, it means that we have to change the whole cabal which we have, which is destroying the rice industry. And the date is 11th of May. That's my take on the situation.
Dr. Douglas, I heard Dr. Jack Dale this morning on Channel 28 talking about the rice industry and trying to make out that he was an ardent follower of Dr. Jagan. Could you explain, when you came to this country to engage in the rice industry, what state was it in, and how would you compare the period when Jagan was president from 1992 to 1997, and when Jagdeo took over? How would you compare that to those two periods?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I was quite impressed with Dr. Jagan Jr., who clearly said that
Joey
Jagan, who clearly said that his father's legacy belongs to the people of Guyana, which, of what I have read, I totally agree with the man, because Dr. Jagan was a philosopher, a visionary, and a politician of a high caliber who wanted the best for his people. Unfortunate, while I learned to know Dr. Jagan, because we came here in '89 when the agreement with the IMF was made, and one of the solutions to bring back Guyana up to standards was to privatize all these government entities which were basically based on the more Stalin communistic way of doing business. So in the beginning, I was hired as a consultant, or the company I worked for, and we made two programs. One was for rice and the other one was for sugar. Rice was implemented quickly and executed. So when I hear these people talk about that it was done by the PPP and so forth. Yes, the period that Dr. Jagan was there, people like myself had no problem. We called there's a problem, you go, you explain it, he called his experts and so forth, and you come to conclusions. In those days, that's why people like Fazal Ali and all these people couldn't do us nothing, because we could go there, explain why it was good. And Dr. Jagan would call us back and say, you do this, you do that, and so forth. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't reprimand us if it would feel that it would touch his people. So when I hear all the rhetoric, what I want to say to those PPP people who are holding on to Jagan's legacy and this and the other.
You mean they think they were holding on to Jagan?
Yeah, they think so, because I have children too. And what I do is I tell my children, this is how I have done it, these are the mistakes I have made. But those children who are youngsters, they have to take what I tell them as data, just like the philosophy of Dr. Jagan, because you guys are believers in his philosophy. And you have those young people who they're trying to indoctrinate now. They have to look at their future, use this as data, and decide for themselves what is the path they want to go. Here are we, people. This morning I looked at the program where The PPP is telling people that, oh, we sent 700 people to Cuba to be trained as a doctors. And so let me tell you something. The smart thing would have been to have established here a medical school, train the people here. Now we have 700 doctors who are Stalin indoctrinated and who are here. This is why I agree with Dr. Jagan Jr. Let us look at the West and also learn from these neighboring things, because the West is prosperous, the rest is not.
Let me ask you, these other two gentlemen, both of them have great history in the PPP. Nelson, your uncle, Michael Ford, that the PPP likes to talk about, that's your uncle. Could you tell us a little bit about that and your connection and your own involvement in agriculture and something that, you know a bit about that, Dr. Jagan? What did you? How would you compare Dr. Jagan and Dr. Jagdeo? And what would you say?
Tough question. Tough only because it's almost unreal when one looks at the comparison between Dr. Jagan, that's Dr. Chedi Jagan, and Dr. Jagdeo, Bara Jagdeo. The Jagan I knew,
By the
and
way,
I knew.
What was Jagdeo got his doctorate in? People don't seem to want to know what.
Doctor to the fifth, 5 times over.
Oh, yeah.
I see.
Rajendra is better versed in that. The Jagan I knew even as a small boy coming into Charlotte Street, 163 Charlotte Street, then the Ford's residence and all of that, would have been a man of the people. His legacy, and young Jagan said it so beautifully, Joey Jagan, the legacy of Jagan is to the people of this country. Simplicity, integrity, a man who understood what it meant to suffer, to hurt, to really feel pain, and understood how to utilize authority to bring about positive change in the lives of people. Unfortunately, with the death of Jagan, everything about Jagan went through the door, except the name.
How do you feel when Jagdeo called the party a Kuli party? What would Jagan have said if he heard Jagdeo say that?
You see, that's where the difference comes. Dr. Jagan would not have said that. He would have known, as he knew, that the genesis of the PPP party had nothing to do with race, had nothing to do with the color of your skin, nor your religious belief or dogma or whatever it was. The genesis of that party had to do with a coming together of the people of this country, respective of their race, for one single purpose, that they will truly be representatives of a nation and bring about the kind of national reconciliation that was so needed and required at that point in time in the 50s.
Did you notice that Jagdeo is not saying anything about his legacy?
But he has a legacy.
But he's not saying anything about that.
He has a legacy that has been...
Why is he talking about Dr. Jagan's legacy and not his legacy? He was president for 2 terms. Why is he not talking about his legacy?
You know, there's a beautiful piece in the good book which says that a particular king was weighed in the balance and found wanting. Well, Jagdeo has been weighed in the balance and found wanting. 90%, more than that, of the endemic corruption, the lawlessness, the generational ills we have in this country have come about in the regime of Bara Jagdeo. And there are no questions about that. He cannot match up with the people he talks about. He shouts down about Burnham. He hasn't a clue who Burnham was. Because if he really has a clue, he has to be fooling himself. He shouts down about being a son and a child of Chedi Jagan. He too has no clue of who Chedi Jagan was. The one thing Chedi Jagan was not was a hypocrite. He was not prepared to say one thing and do the other. He was not prepared to live above his means. He was not prepared to utilize the monies in this country to fatten his friends. He was not prepared to use power and to wield power to discriminate and to destroy the lives of human beings in this country. He was not prepared to continue the endemic lawlessness, crime, and evils that have plagued this country, one way or the other, in the pursuit of absolute power and dictatorial trends.
Shall I read a little bit and see if you agree with this? This is something written by Clinton Collymore. You know who he was, Clinton Collymore. And it's printed in the Thunder News. Thunder is the organ of the PPP. And here is what he said in an article called Chedi Jagan, the Peerless Visionary. His birth, Chedi Jagan was born on March 22nd, 1918, in a rural working class family in Port Morant on the quarantine, to the day of his death on March the 6th, 1997, he did not forget his roots. He never betrayed the working people and constantly struggled on their behalf. These days, some of the detractors cling to his achievements, hoping to gain political mileage. What do you think about that?
Well, that's true. The organizations that Cheddi Jagan, as a man, would have set up and would have been part and parcel of, those organizations were intended to be full participatory as it relates to people's participation, as it related to the common man having a voice. And by the way, that's a fundamental democratic principle, which the PPP today doesn't understand anymore. The ability to speak clearly and concisely what is on your mind as it relates to governance and lawlessness and whatever else, and to state your case without fear of discrimination or injustices being perpetrated against you. So that those organizations were set up for the people. The organizations that the PPP has set up now are for the people, their people, to cause undue hardships, more terror, fear, injustices, discrimination, and you could go on. Endemic lawlessness in this country.
Rajendra, you are an experienced, you grew up in the PPP, didn't you?
Yes,
you were
25 years,
you
25
were
years.
one-time Jagdev's advisor. Could you
Personal assistant.
And personal assistant. Could you tell us something about Mr. Jagdev and compare that with Dr. Jagan that you know very well?
Well, the first thing that will come to my mind is the question of humility. It was absent.
You mean
This-
Jagdev was humane or
No, humility.
Oh, I see.
I mean, it was absent in Jagdev. The second thing is, a person who becomes a leader, if he's not connected to the working people, will obviously stray. The reality of Jagan is that he was linked to the working people, the ordinary people. Bharat, on the other hand, I was part of the writing and part of the propaganda machinery, actually independent of the PPP, not paid, but contributed to it. Bharat never lifted a finger as he was in the PY, in participating in the struggle in any way. Never lifted a finger within the PPP in the struggles of the people of this country.
Has he ever written anything?
He was never written, he had never participated. He was pushed to the top. You know, in all organizations there's some level of nepotism. He had some friends in the PPP, and he was pushed to go to study.
Did you know what the
in
former
Soviet Union.
PNC minister said about him when he was working in this?
I heard he was, he didn't contribute anything much.
He
in
said
this.
he never gave a full day's work.
Right. I think Bharat was a planner in terms of how to get up there and how to win friends and influence people. That was what he was about. In terms of how brilliant Bharat was, he used the state money to employ highly paid professionals who guided him. But he himself, if I were to ask if Bharat had vision, I would say yes, he had one.
For himself.
And that vision was division. Bharat introduced the most serious kind of division in this country. All his approach was hit them. And hit them meant the opposition.
So
and
why
the
did he tell?
opposition
Why did he
was
tell?
Afro-Guyanese.
So why did he tell Ramatar to kick asses?
Well, as I said,
Whose
that
asses
is
were
that's his philosophy. He doesn't have unity. Working with people is not his style. He believes he can be a bully, and his own words, kick ass. He believes he can subjugate people. He believes he can put fear into them. This was his whole
But
approach.
he said Ramatar was too democratic. What does he mean? What did he mean by that?
Well, Ramatar, to my mind, was not to anything. Unfortunately, I felt that when Mr. Ramatar, and I know him personally, obviously over the years, would have taken the presidency, he would have tried to correct some of the things, because he's a nice guy. I mean, Ramatar's a nice guy, and I thought he would have pulled some people together back with him, and sort of regain some of Cheddi's legacy and Cheddi's attitude to people, farmers, and the working class. But he simply went there and perpetuated what Bharat.
Let me ask you
did.
something.
And all that Bharat
If
did.
you were president, would you?
Let me just
would-
finish
would-
this. All that Bharat did was take the patrimony of the people of this country and hand it over to his friends. And I will disagree with my friend to some extent when he talked of Stalin. Both systems had their dictators. Let's face facts. Some of the bloodiest dictators were in the capitalist world. And so you will have that. And that is why I love Jagan when he said, if you notice, Jagan helped the capitalists of this country. He protected the paint industry. He protected the beer industry. He was a man who understood you had to help the local private capitalists, the local private businessmen. But at the same time, he had to protect the workers against those very people too, and have a balance.
But didn't Jagan talk about lean and clean government?
Yeah. Lean, clean, we had only 14, I think 9 ministries if I'm not mistaken, but way below where we are right now. And obviously the corruption was not there, and the smallness of the government was there, because the whole idea was to utilize money effectively to help people, to invest, to develop the country. And if you talk of Jagan, one of his understanding of the situation was, he always talk of taking the best of both worlds. There was no condemning, throw away the baby with the bathwater. There are a lot of negative things in the socialist world, but there were some positive things. His idea was to take the positive from that world, take the positive from the other world.
May I comment on that?
Let me just finish this. And so that the different people will benefit in some real way. That is why Jagan advocated the trisectoral economy, because it is a reality that in third world the trisectoral economy was the fact that we would have the vibrant private sector, which will be the main instrument for development, but obviously the private sector will have some limitation in third world country, especially not enough capital, the culture and so on, and so we have that. And then the cooperative sector, which was flourishing under Chinese government. The cooperative is an instrument for allowing people, poor people, to collectivize and maybe get on and create wealth. I will tell you this much. The ILO came into this country. I was advisor to Minister of Labor at the time. The ILO came, a lot of money was spent to revise the cooperative law, to bring it, make it modern, so that if we implemented it, we could have taken cooperative to a higher level. It is sitting on a shelf catching dust. So Cherry initiated this. In other words, the cooperative was that means of also alleviating poverty. And the third one was the state itself. The state could assist the private sector, but in many instances, sometimes the private sector may not have the capital or may not be willing to invest in certain areas. So the state will have to step in, because in the final analysis, we need to create jobs. And if the private sector might be unwilling to some extent or not have the resources, we can either have a partnership between the private sector and the government, which is an excellent approach. And sometimes, if we can't help it, then the government itself may have to invest in certain areas. For instance, one area will be secondary production in the agricultural area, for instance, processing of agricultural goods. So if the private sector who do not want to, or do not want to in partnership with the government, then the government owes it to the farmers to do something about it.
You want to say something, Dr.
Yeah, well, you see, indeed, it is about what philosophy do you have. Of course, I read what Dr. Jagan said, and I want to bring it back to the rice industry. What you call a co-op, I would prefer to call a public company. Because the
shareholding company.
Yeah, a shareholding company. It for us is the same. The difference is that in the more capitalist system, you make sure that professionals run that, and which I think in the other form you have people who are there because they have a political affiliation and so forth and so forth. Let me give you a simple example. This week, we're going to concentrate on Essequibo and the mischief which is being done there to farmers. Those farmers who are so disappointed try to start a co-op there to help themselves, because nobody is helping them, not the government, not nobody. And I compare it with the mischief going on. Why Jagan says co-op is how you can help yourself, create jobs, and so forth. Those co-op are 2 years busy to get an approval from the minister, and I have witnessed here because I have some rice acreage as well. Started a PPP group of people started a co-op, and just to see how this thing worked, I said I want to be part of it too, because they needed the mill to do whatever they wanted to do. And these chaps got the authorization from the minister and everything in 3 to 4 weeks, everything signed. Worse, they got a quota from the Venezuela deal immediately, and so forth and so forth. So it tells you that when these chaps refer to Dr. Jagan, you understand, this is false, this is not right. Back to the rice industry. Let me compare
Before
it.
you go there,
Yeah.
I wanted to make this point. A lot of people profess to be wanting and do something else. I know a lot of Muslims who are supposed to follow the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad, but they are completely the opposite. The same thing with Hindus,
Yeah.
the same thing with the Christians. Jesus Christ and Muhammad and the Hindu leaders, founders, they were men of quality. They were people who fought for the underdog. But there are people today who say that they follow Jesus Christ, who say they follow Muhammad, who say they follow Ram, but they're completely the opposite.
Yeah.
So this is what is happening to Dr. Jagan. And as his son quite rightly said, his father may be turning in the way where his ash was thrown, because they have completely abandoned the ideas of the PPP. And you know why we here have to defend the Jagan? The reason for that is because there's a history behind it. My father, who's one of the founder members of the Rice Producers Association that came into being in 1946, before Dr. Jagan came back to this country. My father was active in politics. He was one of the founder members of the PPP, by the way. Our friend here, his uncle, was one of the senior members of the PPP. That's why he was killed when they set the bomb on Freedom House. So there is a history, and you can see that history is with us, not with Mr. Jagdeo. Mr. Jagdeo, as our friend said, never sold a newspaper, never wrote an article about anything. So he has no history, he has no connection with the PPP, no legacy. But let me say something back about the rice industry. One of the biggest co-ops in this country, rice co-op, is the Vogonugan Rice Co-op. I remember the fellow who is the head of GRA, what's his name again? I always forget his name.
Satar.
Hushir Satar. His father worked there, and we knew him very well. That was a thriving rice mill. When you go there and you see it now, in fact, it's closed down. It's closed down. Remember we went and we spoke to Robert Prasad about that when he was Minister of Agriculture. He did nothing about it. So it is not a fact to say that co-ops can't work. It has worked in this country. In fact, time may not allow us, but the history of this country, when the slaves were freed, they had to form co-ops to survive. Maybe it's a different thing from other countries.
It's for me, that's a preface.
And they were able to acquire lands and were able to work. Look, Farm Village, for instance, a village, a predominantly African village where I live, was a co-op. And the people had small pieces of land and they worked it collectively. So it is not, Guyana is a cooperative Republic of Guyana. Jagan didn't change it when he came to office, and it still there is. Mr. Jagdeo doesn't know that Guyana is the cooperative Republic of Guyana.
Allow me to just say one thing, okay? One of the realities of our country and many countries like ours is availability of capital and relatively cheap capital. And the problem we face in this country is that, and I think Durga is correct, if you do have something, look, Rockefeller, Kennedy, they own a lot, can't remember what they own. But the idea is that when you own a company, the company is run along capitalist lines. It's run with cost accounting and capital depreciation and capital reserve, everything. It's just that the state owns the shares. And we are saying, our government, and I see a new government after May 11, would employ the best. If it's a state, look, we have Guy Oil in this country. If it wasn't for Guy Oil, we would catch hell in terms of fuel prices. So, but it's making profits. I was a director in GCIS. It was rundown. We took it from a rundown company, and it became one of the top insurance companies, all it was state-owned, because you put the best, and we treated the workers well. So we believe that if we can run the government well, as we promised, we'll run the companies well, we'll employ the best. If we want to put a director to run, we'll put the best. Now, we are talking of a development bank. Now the rice farmers and the farmers know you go to the bank, you have to pay 15, 16, 17% interest. You cannot survive. That is why most of the loans is going to commercial sector. You buy and sell.
But it is the PPP who closed down the agribank.
No,
Yeah,
because
I want to interject right there.
One of the first things you have to do after May 11 is re-establish the agribank that farmers
Positively.
can
What I'm
have
saying.
affordable loans. But let me give you an example
Yeah.
why I am so against this government and that it has to change. Let me give you a simple example. Because a simple person who is a truck chauffeur with us tell us when I ask her, what do you think of this thing? And it was a specific thing which was going on. They say this government who I voted for is spitting in my face and telling me it's raining. Let me give you an example at a higher level where these people really think that Guyanese are fools. When I hear the whole story of the Marriott Hotel, and Gina, you know I'm on the board of offshore banks and all of that, you understand? And you come as this government and telling me that you are for establishing the anti-money laundering bill and the anti-terrorism bill, but you don't want to establish the body who will control that, then at that moment I was confused. Then I heard that the owners or the shareholders of the Marriott Hotel would be two companies from British Virgin Island. Well, let me tell you as a businessman, when you come and you tell me your company is established at British Virgin Island, you either didn't pay taxes or it is stolen money. Simple. That is why it's called a so-called tax haven, but it's more than that. All the stolen money of the world is either in Switzerland, Luxembourg, or one of these tax havens. So on the one hand, you're telling the public, and then you must consider the public stupid, that they're not going to understand that that is money. That is why it was no surprise to me, because behind those offshore companies, I'm sure that they were rich boys from Guyana and no Chinese or whatever they were saying. You understand? So they're fooling people and thinking that people are stupid. The same thing here. I now hear about a gasification plant for husk. That is what they should have done since when Jagan died, because those things were discussed. There are gasification plants in Guyana. One is in Mahaika. There is a complete husk to steam to electrical power plant. It is sitting in crates for over 10 years because they couldn't got an agreement with GPL to buy the energy. So those things were on their way, you understand? But when this cabal took over, when Dr. Jagan died, everything died with him. And I can go on. They're going to manufacture Rice Krispies. That is 0.0000% of the rice market. What must I do with that? You understand? So the investments are not made in the proper place. Instead, with all kind of trickery, taking taxpayers' money, building big hotels. And I want to, but that is a personal opinion, that it was not about building at a hotel. It was about the deal, who is going to make how much money where. You understand? And I can point out several other projects, such as the projects in drainage and irrigation. I see those pumps they have installed. Every well-qualified civil engineer will tell you that they have never seen such idiotery as what you see there. So those are the things in the rice industry. And gentlemen, that is what we're here for. I understand your grievance that the visionary and the founder of your previous party is being offended by what is happening now. But let us first start to rescue the rice industry. You understand? Because sugar is in a coma. You understand? The first thing I want you guys to do in the next program is look at what was proposed before in 1990 about sugar, that you should not invest in big plants, but go to liquid sugar and more of those processing plants, go to the end market. If all of that was done, you understand? And it's not that this country doesn't have professionals. I meet them every day in all parts of the world, but they're not being used. The people they use are those people who are cunning and making all kind of side deals.
Which fosters more division.
Yeah, of course.
I want to let the public understand that the reasons why we are going on and on about Dr. Jagan, because we are very hurt that we, particularly the three of us here, that we made great sacrifice to build the PPP. Jagdeo was a little boy. We sent him on a scholarship. I was on the PYU Central Committee when his name came up. And Dr. Udine, who he posted to one of those Far Eastern countries, was the one who recommended him. He posts Dr. Udine all over the world, and Dr. Udine cannot come back and serve his country. Dr. Udine would have been one of the most brilliant presidents. You would have followed in the footsteps of Dr. Jagan. And if he did, we would not have been sitting here talking about Dr. Jagan and talking about the crisis that we have in this country. So I want you to understand the importance. I was charged for 1973. I don't know what he's carrying on about Dr. Jagan. I was charged in 1970. This morning I heard him talking about the two boys who were killed in 1973. I was charged at the same time down on the west coast of the Marara, and I was charged for treason in 1980. So I don't know what Dr. Jagan is, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo is talking about Dr. Jagan. What we need to examine the next time we're here, gentlemen, is what is Dr. Bharat Jagdeo's legacy. That is what we should be talking about, and not Dr. Jagan's legacy. But you had an important point to say.
Well, I was just about to say his legacy is about division. Real division, land acquisition, division, financing, division, contracts, division, promotions, division, discrimination, village development. All the acts of the Jagdeo into Ramata regime have brought about more division and discriminatory tendencies than it has brought about unification of this country. The most subtle act, and I'm glad you mentioned co-ops, is the attempted deregularization of co-ops in this country. Because land co-ops in this country, and those co-ops, by the way, are owned by peasant farmers and smallholders, own tremendous blocks of land. I will agree right away that the lands were underutilized and all of that. But that's another kettle of fish, has to do with management and technical support, finance support, etc., which were lacking. Because the comprehensive restructuring of co-op education, co-op development has to be looked into. But the fact is, those lands, those co-ops were about to be deregulated at the behest of powerful people in this country who want to grab hold of those lands. As a matter of fact, thousands of acres of lands that originally belonged to co-ops and co-op societies in this country have been handed over on the platter to friends and supporters of this regime.
Let me examine the rice industry. You want to say a little bit about the cabal, and how they're intertwined, how they have actually, Jagdeo had placed people like Buddy and people like that in the rice industry, and fellas who are in the, who own these rice mills in Essequibo and other places, how they are actually reaping the money. How have they been able to do that?
Well, we have a lot of new players who came from nowhere. While Mr. Jagnarain and Dr. Leslie Ramsamy, who to me bail out because nobody can find him anymore. Yeah, okay. The situation is that the lucrative Venezuela deal is for family, friends, and cronies. You understand? So then suddenly, let me give you an example. Buddy Shivraj now has a mill which he took over from another miller, and he got a hog of the quota. Now, it is being said to the other millers, the reputable one, yes, but it's a balance of what you export to other markets and what you sell locally and what you can give to Venezuela. Well, it is simple. Buddies doesn't do nothing local and nothing to other export markets except what Jagnarain fixes for him. You understand? The other millers have to struggle now with the damage they have done in the rice market. They have to find market and compete against those kind of guys who are being subsidized, getting money from the government to pay farmers and that sort of thing. The question now is, what will happen this crop? What I'm saying is the following. One, can we please examine the Petro-Caribe deal? Yes. I would wish that the PPP declares me a madman and comes out and say, Dorga, this is the Petro-Caribe deal. This is what we still owe to Venezuela. and show Guyana where the money is.
Yes.
That's one. Two,
Could you
come clean with the contract which you have with Venezuela. It's government to government, so the Guyanese need to know what is written in that
Because
contract.
you're
Precisely.
talking about,
Yeah.
Jagdeep is talking about transparency.
Yeah.
Transparency meaning exposing
so
what exists. Everyone
Can
can
I ask-
discuss
Don't,
it.
don't
Can I
let
ask-
us only come and say that. Let them come and tell us, because they're the power of the day.
One second.
I would like to ask you a question, because I know you're very well equipped with the information. I was hearing that with this sale to Venezuela, there are actually some middlemen somewhere along the line that is reaping some real benefits off of this.
I have published it. For instance, if we charter a vessel to Europe, it costs us about $62 a ton. That is about 10 times the distance to Venezuela. But on the Venezuela vessels, we pay $68 a ton. So who is making the money in between? When you calculate 1 million ton, you understand, you're talking 30 million United States dollars. You understand? Come clean, show me the charter party, then I can do a forensic investigation
That's
and
right.
show that this is unacceptable. That's one.
So in a sense, there's a level of what you call transfer, like how brokers used to transfer the pricing somewhere else. In a way, they're transferring the price to the whoever owns the boat, and they
No, this is why you need offshore companies, Marriott offshores and so. That's why you need offshore company, so you can hide it away. That is what it is used for. So it's time we tell the farmers that, you know, you are in this crisis because of the people you trusted and they have failed you.
Precisely.
The question is now, what do we do? Because this crop is coming in. You know, we're going next week to Essequibo. The farmers want to know, why are we getting these low prices while the PPP government is saying we're doing so fantastic. We have fantastic markets. Why are we getting these low prices? We have to explain to these people that this crisis, which was predicted, and when Mr. Granger said it last year, when he called on people like us to come and explain why are farmers complaining to me. And when we show him, and he came out and he adopted what people like me said, that the industry is in a crisis.
Yeah.
They called it voodoo mathematics. The same people who talk, they not talk race and this and that and holding on to Jagan legacy, and so they call it voodoo mathematics, referring to this racial thing. You understand? But we're done with that. We already discussed it. We're done with that. Now the question is, what can the farmers expect? I am asking the PPP. I'm asking this government. All this money you have shaved off from the Venezuela deal. Help the farmers this crop. Pay them off. Talk to the millers that they receive this paddy, store it. Because you have to understand, it's only 2 months to the election. They can only do maybe 1 or 2 shipments to Venezuela. Millers are not stupid, especially the millers who get hurt, like Ruimzig and so. They're going to say, what am I going to do with the paddy of the farmers? I'm not going to buy any, because if I'm in this situation, what am I going to do? You understand? So the farmers are in a dire situation. Somebody got to do something. The PPP is the order of the day. So they have to do it. And you guys, I'm asking you as the political people, see what you can do that this government comes clean, tell us where this Petro-Caribbean money is, and let them pay them farmers.
Should I explain to the viewers the Petro-Caribbean agreement? The arrangement is that 10 years ago, when this government signed the Petro-Caribbean agreement, it works like this, that this government pays to Venezuela 60% of the fuel that is taken, and the rest, the 40%, will be paid over a period of 25 years. So after 25 years, they will then have to pay the 40% at an interest rate of 1%. Now, it doesn't take a mathematical genius to work out what has happened to the 40%. Could you explain that? Over the period of 10 years, how would you, in what quantum would you explain they would have money with it? How much billions of dollars?
You know, if there's no secrecy, and there shouldn't be, because this is the peoples of Guyana money, we could quickly calculate and say that, well, you have so much in your pocket. You understand? So rescue the rice farmers from the damage you have done to them. You understand? And then quickly, as I have proposed in the way forward, bring in brokers. Let us see where we can market this rice. You understand? Somebody is going to have to take a loss because of not positioning the rice in the rice market. Venezuela is a good example. We position that particular quantity there. So if you know you had more production, you should have bring professionals who will say, well, where can we accommodate this thing?
Of course.
It's marketing. They don't know that. So come clean with the Petro-Caribe deal so we know how much we have in our coffers. We can establish how we pay the farmers, that this industry which is built up by farmers, not the PPP, and it was driven by good prices, not by rhetoric about how much drainage you do, which they didn't need it. You understand?
They're gambling, because if they are saying that they're going to give the millers, their millers, $5 billion.
They gave it already,
pay.
they said.
So if they give it already, where is it to give when the rice has not been harvested?
So this is what I'm trying to tell you. The farmers are not informed of these things. That 5.1 billion, which is given to the millers, that is going to be shipped before. And I think they will do that because they're afraid if things go wrong for them on the 11th of May, where they going to dock or hide or whatever, because it's going to come out. So that 5.1 billion got to be cashed first if it is cashable.
Let me just
you understand? And what happens with the rest coming in now?
Let me just say this.
Precisely.
If the 5.1 billion, first of all, I don't think, I can't recall it was being budgeted for or has passed through Parliament in any way. Therefore, it's like the other 4 point something billion they spent illegally. This 5.1 has been pulled from somewhere.
Yeah.
We don't know where it was pulled from. We don't know where it went. So maybe it's part of the post-11 support for some of them.
It's a bribe.
For them. But let me finish
It's
this.
a bribe. It's a bribe.
But so we can see some terrible misplacement of people's money somewhere. But putting that aside, we have an immediate problem for what you're saying in terms of the producers actually getting money to go back into production. And even if they produce, the ability of the millers to pay for the paddy, so we have a bottleneck. And at the same time, when we talk of these big, nice, big projects, 58 million US there, so much million US there, and so on, and how much money is held in the GGMC, which should have been in the consolidated fund, at the will to be used by the government of this country, and how much money is in the Forestry Commission's fund, which should be in a consolidated fund to be used by the people for the taxpayers and the people's benefit, and how much money is in the Lotto fund. And so we have all this money all over the place.
Petro-Caribe fund.
Petro-Caribe fund. So all this money is all over the place to be utilized by this government, and it's being utilized for its own benefit and the benefit of its cronies. When this, and what we are saying is that at the immediate point in time, if this government had cared about the people and cared about the farmers, that money could have been drawn from and utilized in some way to save the ordinary people of this country.
Absolutely.
So there's clear demonstration that the problem is not a shortage of money to deal with the situation, but a shortage of will to address the people's need. So I am wondering now that I'm glad I left this government, and this is one of the reasons I left it, because I grew up in a system where my government was interested in people's welfare. Now I am dealing with a situation where they're looking after their welfare and not the welfare of the people. And so I'm going to, probably this might be my last say here because we're running out of time. I am saying categorically it is clear that the government has at its disposal a tremendous amount of liquidity from various sources. And rather than using it to save the people, they're distributing it to, or putting it off somewhere so that for their benefit. So because of that, I'm going to appeal to the people of this country. There is need for a change to put in place a government that will act in the interest of the people. And I'm glad to know that there is a coalition, and Chadi, in the heart of the PNC time, wanted to collate to bring back the races together, the parties together, the prodigal sons to come back together, because this country cannot go anywhere, it cannot be built, it cannot be advanced, the people's benefit will not be in place unless we have unity of our people. And we have moved in that direction, not only to create that unity, but we are going to be telling you some of the things we would do, or we would have done in this situation. We would have taken that money and used it to save the farmers. Thank you very much.
All right, certainly, and I agree with you there, Rajendra, because that pyramid has to be reversed. You know, the pyramid with the PPP is at the top and the rice farmers at the bottom, PPP at the top, The poor man at the bottom, the PPP at the top, sugar workers at the bottom, PPP at the top, everybody else at the bottom has to be reversed. The only way to reverse that, and by the way, brothers and sisters out there, the reality is the PPP is scared of any kind of unification of this country. They're running scared. I'll tell you why. In a family, there's only one headship, or there ought to be one headship. There ought to be one vision. There ought to be that sense of unity and purpose going forward. They're scared of that, because with that, they can't run to the rice farmer now with the bogeyman thing that Burnham made you do this. They can't run to the sugar work any longer and say, Burnham made you do this. You know, Burnham is like a bogeyman for them. They can't run anywhere and be critical of what has happened in the past. They have to now face the reality of speaking truth. They've wasted the nation's fortune. They have discriminated against the mass of people in this country. They've caused undue hardship in rice farming communities, rice farming families. They've caused lots of rice farmers and millers to go under by their undeniably stupid policies, selfish policies. They've reversed the pyramid of success, where the farmer is at the top of the scale, to where they and their cronies have destroyed the rice industry, to the extent now where rice farmers are no longer planting rice, they're the road protesting. I was in Essequibo at one of the stages of that rice protest, when those rice farmers were being released from the lockups, having demonstrated for their right, and a right which the PPP claims that they fought for in the 50s and 60s. The same thing they're now denying human beings in this country. We have to fight, brothers and sisters, to change this diabolic state that they put us in. May the 11th, every rice farmer, every sugar worker, every clerk, every postman, every policeman, every soldier, every Guyanese must go to the polls with one thing in mind. We need a change, and change we must. Vote for the coalition and change the fortunes of this country.
Yeah, I want to plead to every Guyanese who is a good human being, and that is what all of us supposed to be. You know, when you talk to rice farmers and sugar workers, and when you read history, how these people have slaved, our ancestors have slaved, I came to the conclusion that I have to remind the world, and I did so in 2005 in Hanoi, and it was taken over by everybody. I want to look at everybody in the eyes and say, is it acceptable that those people who feed us are becoming the poorest and being marginalized again? It is unacceptable. Let us reverse that. I have given up on this government, just like most of the rice farmers. Let us make a change on the 11th. Those people who feed us, we have to honor them properly and protect them. Thank you.
Gentlemen, when we went to Leguan, you remember, we asked some of the PPP, one or two of the PPP supporters, not rigging an election and not calling it for 20 years, which one is worse? The PPP fellow couldn't answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is the situation we have. And that is why, in closing, I will say this. The reasons why Mr. Jagdeo has got to go on the rampage and trying to hide behind Dr. Jagan, because he can't face the public. He cannot defend his legacy. Because as Nelson quite rightly said, Jagdeo is responsible for destroying this country. And he has used every possibility to make his friends richer and his relatives and elements within the PPP rich and powerful, and are trampling on the rights, something that Dr. Jagan and his wife stood for. So that in closing, I'd want to make that special appeal to all our brothers and sisters outside there who have been struggling, that when you on election day, to go out there and vote solidly for the coalition, for the APNU AFC coalition, and so that we can send these people packing, and then we'll deal with those who have mishandled this economy of this country. I want to thank you very much. Next week we will have a similar program, same day, on the Sunday, on the same time. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.